A few more minutes here. Okay, just to let everyone know, we are live streaming to our OPRD Directors channel, YouTube. Um, we will be getting started here in the next minute. I'll give it till about 2:01 and then we'll jump in. And if anyone else logs in, we'll go ahead and get them caught up as well. But we're getting pretty close to the amount of participants. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started here. Welcome, everyone. My name is Robert Ellison. I am a policy advisor with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm the one who's been emailing you with the updates to this meeting and getting things scheduled. So happy we could all jump in today and be able to uh, take some time, be a part of this rule advisory committee, and take a look at our draft rules around county opportunity grants program. I'm going to go ahead and move forward here. So, um, our agenda today, we're going to be going over introduction. So I'll have each one of you at least come off mute as we go through, and we'll just introduce ourselves and how you relate to the program, what your background information is, and maybe how long you have been a part of a program that interacts with this work. We'll go over what a rule advisory committee is, what our roles are for the day, and the uh, type of work a rule advisory committee does. We'll go over some background on the County Opportunity Grants program itself, go over some questions about the process, timeline, and our expected implementation dates, and then we will jump into our draft rule review. The rule review will go kind of line by line within the draft document that I had sent all of you. Julian will be taking that on, and we'll just like I said, go step by step, get your feedback, input, and any additional information that you might want to add. All right. So to start off, what is a RAC? So a Rural Advisory Committee is a group that OPRD pulls together of stakeholders that have um, some input or are affected or maybe an interested party to the rules that we're working on. The purpose of the RAC is to improve clarity to help identify impacts of the individuals working within the rules that we're looking to adjust and pull in some different perspectives prior to the rules going out for public comment. How a RAC fits into rulemaking we consider it under ORS 183.333, but we use them early in the process before draft rules go to public comment and to the commission, just to help us make sure that, we have another set of eyes from different perspectives other than just our own as we jump into those draft rules. And so what to expect as a RAC member. So you review the draft rule materials and participate in the discussion. This is an opportunity for these members to provide feedback that helps shape the workable rules. It's not a time where we're going to go through and edit the rules together. It's a time where we'll read them together, we'll take your comments and your considerations, and then we'll review all of those later and see how we can best approach any of those comments, concerns, or considerations that any one of you bring forward. So I must have missed a slide here, but before we jump into the background, I am gonna go ahead and we'll start with our introductions. So again, my name is Robert Ellison. I'm a policy advisor with Oregon State Parks. I've been with Oregon State Parks for almost 8 years now, and I've worked kind of around the agency, anywhere from a park ranger to HQ. So Julian, do you want to go next?
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
Um, Hi all, I'm Julian Fedorchuk. I'm the Grants Program Coordinator for the County Opportunity Grants Program, and I also work on the Land and Water Conservation Fund here at OPRD. And I've been in this position for about 2 years now, and I'm very grateful for you all to be willing to participate in this RAC. So thank you all for joining. And I will give it to Michelle.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michelle Scalise. I am the manager of the Grants and Community Programs section at OPRD. I've been with the agency for 29 years. I've been in the grants division working on the various grants programs since 2004 and been managing this section since 2019. And yeah, thank you for your participation. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank
Katie?
Did you say Cindy? I'm sorry.
Cindy or Stacy, I missed it too.
Yeah, me too.
I said Katie,
Oh,
sorry.
Katie. Okay.
Hi, Katie Guthrie. I'm the External Relations Manager for OPRD, and I'm just here to provide support in the background. Thanks. The next one I see on my list is C Storm.
Yes, that's Craig Storm. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with Coos County Parks Department. I've been working with the department since '92, and I've been in the supervisory role for 15 plus years. I'm the current director of the Coos County Parks Department.
Thank you very much. I'll just go ahead and keep calling on people so we make sure we catch everyone. So Mark Wall.
Yeah, Mark Wall here, Douglas County Parks Director. Been in this position almost 5 years now, and have applied for and received a number of county opportunity grants. So I'm familiar with that program as well as the other grant programs OPRD puts out there for us. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Mark. Cindy Robert.
Hi, good afternoon. Cindy Robert. I'm with Oregon Recreation and Park Association. That association includes city, county, and special district park agencies and about 2,200 park and rec professionals and volunteers.
Thank you, Cindy. We'll go Melissa Enright.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. My name is Melissa Enright, and I'm from Columbia County Parks. I've been with the Parks Department for just about 5 years now. I've applied for a number of county opportunity grants that we've gotten through, and yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next, Sarah Ekman.
Hi there, my name is Sarah Ekman. I'm with Clackamas County Department of Transportation and Development, and the County Parks program is one of the programs in a group called Community Services for us. So I oversee them and also have been on the County Opportunity Grant Advisory Committee the last few years. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Next up is Steve Lambert.
Hey y'all, I'm Steve Lambert, the Roads and Parks Director for Jackson County. I've been here for 17 years now and was with Lynn County for 10 years prior to that. I've applied for and received grants and was on the County Opportunity Grant Committee for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, I have Thomas Maloney.
Hello, everybody. Thomas Maloney, Hood River County Forestry. I'm the Recreation Program Manager here. Oversee the trails and the campgrounds on a 35,000 acre tree farm. I'm also on the RTP Advisory Committee as an OHV representative, and have applied for and executed a COGP grant award as well as a couple other OPRD grants.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Next up, I have Tyler Stone.
Yeah, apologies, my camera's not initializing, but Tyler Stone, I'm the administrator for Wasco County. Been in this role for 20 years, and I've been dealing with the parks programs and grant opportunities for that same amount of time.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Last up, I have Wayleys.
Sorry, it's Stacy Whaley. I was going to change it here in a minute. I'm the director at Lynn County Parks and Recreation. Unfortunately, Steve and I never crossed paths up here, but we've crossed paths otherwise. We've also received multiple county opportunity grants, and I've been here for about 3 years. And so I came in on the second half of the last one that we had. I also serve on the Land and Water Conservation Fund Grant Review Committee.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Anyone else on that I have missed? I'll give a second just in case I missed anyone. Nope. Alrighty, perfect. Well, we'll go ahead and jump into the background here. I'm going to let Julian go ahead and take it for a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So just a very brief background on County Opportunity Grant Program. Brief because you're all pretty familiar with this at this point. But it's been established in 1983, and it is funded through a portion of recreational vehicle registration fees. And typically, we try to award around $850,000 a year to counties for the acquisition, development, rehabilitation, and planning of county park and recreation areas that provide camping facilities. And next slide. And then just a quick little blurb about the purpose for these rule revisions. This is pretty much intended as a general update and modernization of the COGP rules. Last they were updated was almost 30 years ago at this point. So we're just trying to kind of bring them up to current standard in alignment with our other related grant programs, primarily the local government grant program and Land and Water Conservation Fund. But we were also hoping to, or seeking to increase the clarity and guidance for applicants and grantees, as well as increase administrative flexibility through removing specific dates that are set out in the rules and things of that nature. We were also going to update the advisory committee provisions, similarly, just kind of formalizing a lot of current administrative practices. And then we were also seeking to add a conversion rule and an emergency procedure rule, again, in line with our other related grant programs. And that was all rather kind of vague and broad brush, but a lot of it, I was going to wait until we do the line by line review before we get really into the specifics of what these changes are seeking to be.
Perfect. So I'm going to jump in here real quick. We're going to go over kind of where we are in the process and what our timeline looks like. So right now we are in our outreach phase of our administrative rulemaking process. We started in 2025 developing an early draft of rules. This outreach process really started taking place in February when we went to the commission to ask for them to open the rulemaking. And then we gathered early feedback and planned some communication, and we convened this rule advisory committee. So we're really right in the last part of this outreach phase. After this, we'll jump into our public comment period. We're hoping for May, trying to have that public comment period open for the full month of May. Those public comments will be posted to our website weekly, and we will keep our rules page updated as we go through that. We'll jump into agency review in June, where we'll analyze all of the public comment, all of the feedback from our public hearing, as well as any additional information that you all provide as the RAC to finalize our draft rules. And then we will take those final draft rules to the commission for a decision in June of 2026. The OPRD Commission is the final decider on whether these rules get adopted or not. They can adopt the rules as they're written. They may modify the rules, or they may delay the rule entirely. So we will take all of the information and present to them for that final decision. And then we'll file that rule with the Secretary of State and begin implementation. Any anything from anyone, any questions from anyone before we go forward? I think the next step, we're going to just jump straight into these draft rules. I know we're trying our best not to have a second rack time slot, to be mindful of all of your time. So I want to give as much time to those draft rule review, but just wanted to open it up for any questions about anything we've talked about so far. Perfect. Seeing nothing, I'm going to keep going forward. This is our draft rule review time, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here, and Julian will take over.
Thank you. All right, can you all see my screen well enough here?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, great. I think the plan here is basically just to scroll through this document. All of the changes are, track changes in Word. So if you have any comments or input or anything that you would like us to take into account, please just stop at any time and we'd be happy to chat about it. My only note I have two broad notes before we get too deep into this. For all of the definitions, I've previously the rules weren't alphabetized, so I just alphabetized all of them without track changes, and then any additions or edits have changes tracked, so you should be able to see the differences. And then further down in the document as well, a lot of the change, or there, it appears as though there's like a lot of changes in some categories, or like entirely new wording. A lot of that is just more reorganization of where in the rules certain things were, just so that related pieces are near each other. But again, if you have questions about that, please just let us know and be happy to walk through all of that. Cindy, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks. So you said in the beginning, or actually Robert said in the beginning, that it was the two main, well, one of the main reasons was to provide clarity and add administrative flexibility. I saw a lot of the clarity when I was looking through the rule changes, and I'm just hoping that as you follow through, you can maybe just, as we're going through this, maybe you can just describe exactly where that administrative flexibility comes in and which provisions there you think fall in line with that.
Sure. Sure thing.
Thanks.
Steve, we see your hand up too. You want to
Yeah,
go ahead?
I'm just gonna
jump in?
ask, for those of us that the screen is pretty small, is there any way that you can zoom in on that Word document to make the
Is this-
text larger?
This a little better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. So I will just start scrolling and let me know if you have any comments or want to talk about anything.
As we get into some of the specific rules, Julian, we'll probably want to read through some of the additional stuff that we've added.
Sure.
Tyler?
Yeah, thanks. So this is going to be, at least on my end, it's going to be pretty difficult to follow and see. So I'm wondering, I went through and made my comments on the information that you sent out. Do you just want me to give them to you? And then we can listen to everybody else, or if everybody else wants to scroll through.
Are your comments like referring to specific lines or paragraphs in the rules?
Yeah, so they're just ones that you're kind of scrolling through there. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, Tyler, I think as we get to those portions where you have specific comments, if you think it would be beneficial to bring up at that point, just go ahead and raise your hand and make those comments out loud here at the rack.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just not going to be able to see it as you're scrolling past and
Oh,
trying to reference the other documents. So
Mm,
Julian, maybe
Got
you
it.
can just kind of say where we are in the rules, what section, maybe say, especially if it's a change, since they have these documents, like for example, you can say on this one, so we're still in definitions.
right.
You can, just say that we're at 6.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess right now we're just scrolling through the definitions 6 through 12, or any of the previous ones, if any of your comments are relating to that.
so I have one comment on campsites definition.
Mhm.
It's kind of almost the last sentence. Campsites within areas where recreation is a secondary function, such as courthouse grounds, fairgrounds, ports, museum grounds, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of camping and recreational opportunities within those sites. And my sense is that they shouldn't, necessarily be excluded if there is any exclusion there, when especially in rural Eastern Oregon, they're actually administering and pushing forward the recreational opportunities that citizens actually have. So I think there should be some balance there and not just an exclusion.
Mm.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. Mark, I see your hand up as well. Did you have a comment to add in here?
Yeah, just a general comment on the definitions. They all seemed pretty straightforward and just clarifying. I have no issues whatsoever with the proposed changes to definitions.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you. So moving through past or to the next page of definitions. These are definitions 13 through 24, from the county park assistance allocation through project sponsor or RV. Steve?
Yeah, maybe I'm missing something, but number 14, County Park Assistance Program. At the bottom, it says, and recreation areas as defined in quote, county park and recreation area. But I don't see county park and recreation area is defined here. So, it's up, never mind, it's up in 12.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
about
I
that.
was looking down in there. I was looking at the capital A's for the alphabetized list. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Tyler?
Yeah, I had a comment on 12A, and I don't know because I haven't looked at every other county, but a lot of counties are growing, and I'm wondering if that population number should be moved up to like 35,000 to keep pace. Otherwise, we're just going to be pushing those thresholds to smaller and smaller counties.
Writing notes, and we'll look into it. Thank you. Cindy?
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you could go back up to what was discussed on the definition of campsite, I think it was. I'm sorry. I didn't get my hand up in time.
No, that's okay.
If you look at that, actually, that second part that was of concern to someone, it shouldn't be in there anyway. That's not part of the definition. That's part of the formula conversation. And I don't know why it's campsites within areas with recreation and secondary functions such as courthouse, blah, 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 shall not be factored into formula that allocates the distribution of RV. I just think it's not the definition of campsites. I don't even know why it's in the definition. It should be in the formula conversation, but looks like it's always been there. I'm just pointing out that might also resolve the problem that somebody else had with it.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Cindy.
Continuing to scroll further down, now through to the end of definitions. Anyone has any further comments on these? Steve?
Yeah, I'll defer to Katie and Cindy, but I know there was a piece of legislation this last session that I thought pertained to match from cities of certain population. So going back to Tyler's comment on a county has population of 30,000 or less, did that pass? Does it pertain to counties, and would that have any implication on these rules? Should these rules be brought into alignment with that if it did pass?
Yeah, it passed, but only affects cities, counties, and special districts were not included. And at one point in time, the senator said that he was going to talk about next session bringing in, and LRC said they would bring it in next session to bring in counties. But now the senator is upset with special districts and says that's not going to happen. So it just affects cities.
Tyler?
Yeah, on 22 for Project Boundary, Michelle knows this, but I'm dealing with this particular issue on a conversion. And I think there's just there could be a lot better definition because when we're writing these things, it's like, okay, the project boundary, okay, it's this, it's this, it's this parcel, so to speak. And so we draw a line around the parcel that it's in, but the actual project boundary may only be a fraction of the site of that parcel that you're doing it in. And I think you need to be really clear here because I'm looking, at probably what should have been a 3-acre conversion being, I can't remember the total number, but like 13 acres because we didn't draw the right boundary there. And that's a huge issue. I'm dealing with one from probably back in the 80s right now that is a big impact for us here, 30 years later.
Mm-hmm. Mark?
Just a follow-up comment on whoever raised the question about population at 30,000 no less. It might be worth looking back at what the original intent of that split was and whether or not it does need adjusting. 1994, there was 14 counties, 30,000 or less. Today it's 17, so it's actually gone up. I think some Eastern Oregon counties have actually lost population, so it may be fine, but I think it was a good question to just kind of look at and see if that number still meets the original intent. I believe these rules, was it 1994 they were first put together?
I believe the last revision was in 1996. There were a few in that mid-90s range, and the program as itself or as a whole began, I believe, in the early 80s.
Okay. The fact that actually more counties, 3 counties have lost population since 94 and maybe just fine, but I do think it was a good question to take a look at and see if it's still appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, back to Tyler's comment on the project boundary. The way it defines it is as identified on maps provided by the project sponsor. If we had a tax lot in a park where we were just doing one bathroom or one campground improvements with funding, and we submitted a map that said, hey, here's the project boundary, it's this campground portion of a much larger park, would the agency accept that? And I asked that. If not, then it certainly needs to be clarified because these are just huge issues that we're all dealing with, and we'll get to that later in the conversion process with some of my comments and concerns of decisions that were made decades ago. And as we know, communities are changing, communities are growing. We have governor direction to grow our communities and provide more housing, et cetera. And lands just frankly are not used the same way that lands were used 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And these are huge hurdles for us as counties to have to try and work through, and very difficult, challenging ones. So I guess I share that concern just to get it on the record, and to completely agree with Tyler's comments and get some clarification on the record from the agency on how they would interpret it as pertaining to a map that was very specific portion of a park. Would that be accepted by the agency?
Yeah, and I can answer some of that. We definitely had some discussion during the drafting process for these rules on the kind of project boundary versus park boundary distinction. And I believe that what we've proposed here is more focusing on a project boundary kind of uh, identification in the application process and everything. And then I believe in the conversion requirements section later on. Again, we'll certainly get to that. But I think that we have that kind of distinction of we want to identify the project boundary for a specific project rather than the entirety of the park that project might be assisting or helping to develop. But yeah, we definitely, hear your comments and about the clarity of the definition here. Michelle, I don't know if you have anything else to
Yeah,
add to
I
that.
think it depends in case by case basis, but yes, we will consider whatever map is submitted. There are certain things that we'll want to look at to make sure that there's access. It's not, kind of an in-holding type donut hole in the middle of a park kind of situation. Because, we need to make sure that our improvements have access, that kind of thing. Parking, that there's some amenities, some basic amenities within that boundary that's dedicated. So I think it's kind of up for conversation as the maps are submitted and applications are submitted.
Yeah, and again, we'll get to the conversion section later, but the proposed rules in there specified project boundary rather than park boundary. So
I would just suggest, since everything kind of goes back to the definitions at some point, right, during a disagreement. I might just suggest, on maps provided by the project sponsor, which are not required, in all cases to be the entire park or tax lot. Just a little bit further clarification there.
Thank you. Tyler, your hand is still up. Do you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because you guys deal with this day in and day out and understand these definitions, but there's a lot of people that are writing these grants out here that don't deal with them day in and day out, and it may be their first time or second time writing one of these things and don't really understand the implications of this particular definition and the boundary. And let me give you the example that Julian, we talked about last week, you and Allie did. There's a park boundary in the middle of the National Guard Armory's parking lot because they did allow us to park in that parking lot, but we didn't even own that piece of land. And it was included in the park boundary. And it was like I said, it was a National Guard Armory.
Tyler, this is just a side note. I don't think that I fully knew that was not county-owned property. So we can talk about that offline separately. So we can follow up on that, but just wanted to throw that out there. And then I guess moving on through definitions then, unless anybody, Thomas?
Hello. One observation that I just wanted to share, and it's never really tripped me up, but just looking this over, is that further up in the definitions, I see let's see, what's the term? Recreation area included on several of the definitions. Say like on number 10, you have it changed to county park and recreation area. And when we get further down, like number 17, where it says established park system, you don't see the recreation area also included. And if maybe just, it could be, if there's value added, just including the term recreation area throughout some of the definitions, being that, all my projects are on a tree farm. It's not a park. We're very careful not to call it a park. It's very much open to recreation and very popular. But yeah, we just can't be calling it a park. So just a little feedback there.
Yeah, thank you. Unless anyone else has any further comments on the definitions section, I think I can be moving on. Steve?
Yeah, as far as the eligibility, so I'm just wanting to get clarification. And maybe a thorough more review of this will give me my answer, but hopefully you can just answer it. Does all of the stuff that we're talking about today, like the conversion processes, all that fun stuff, pertain to just the County Opportunity Grant Program, or are they applying to all of the RB registration fees as they're distributed amongst these different distribution formulas and, to the counties?
Our intention is for this to be specific to the County Opportunity Grant Program. The County Park Assistance Program is separate from that. It comes from like the same funding source or the same kind of original pool of funds, but the eligibility here is for the revenue distribution for the assistance program rather than the grant program. Cindy?
Okay, so as an outsider in all this, because you guys do this all the time, this eligibility paragraph for me is a perfect example of a running problem I see with the OAR 736, and that's that it is just about where you're doing camping facilities, and like the eligibility doesn't even bring up the camping part. So I mean, you have to refer back over and over again to figure out that this is only for camping facilities, correct? I mean, if I was a regular person, I read eligibility, I wouldn't know that I had to have a camping facility there. So it just seems like it gets let go in this whole rule. Am I the only one who feels that way?
But you don't have to have it's for any county park, not just campsites.
The county, if you look at the definition, it says planning of county park and recreation areas that provide camping facilities.
I hear you, but I guess that's kind of where I was getting tripped up on the eligibility, and that's why I asked the question, because while Julian mentioned that we're just talking today about the County Opportunity Grant Program, this section of the rules talk about how you can use RB, registration fees for maintenance of those parks. Am I mistaken, Julian?
No, I don't think that you're mistaken. Yeah, I think I hear your comments that we could add a little clarity that this is specifically referencing the County Parks Assistance Program. Are there any other comments or questions about that, or moving on to the distribution formula? I mean, there were no changes here. Oh, sorry.
What page are you on, Jill?
This is the bottom of page 4, top of page 4, bottom of page 3. distribution formula 00115 or 15, sorry. Craig?
Yes, I see a lot of changes and so forth in the definitions, but there seem to be no changes in this distribution formula. And hasn't this distribution formula been the same since 1996? Or when has this changed? Because it seems that there are some counties that have improved or added campsites, and there's some counties that don't have any campsites or anything. So I was just wondering how it is that it's based on their population, because in our rural counties such as ourselves, our population is like 60,000, and you go up to up north, and they're talking 400,000, and that really alters or this distribution when these rural counties have a lot more campsites, but they don't have the population.
Yeah. It looks like this section of the distribution formula part here was last updated in 1994. So it's been the same formula for about 30 years. I don't know if it was exactly the same in the 10 years prior to that or not. But yeah, so 30% of the proportion is based on the population, while the 50% is from the number of campsites and 20% from the number of registrations in each county. Did you have
well, for instance, we have a lot of folks that do come and visit our campsites and stay at our campsites that are from, that Portland, Clackamas, that higher population area, which they're also registering their campers in that area. So they're getting 30% plus 10%, with those higher population areas, and this seems to be leaving the rural counties, trying to struggle to get any of that money that provides the majority of the facilities for these people that live in those more populated counties.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a suggestion about how you would prefer the distribution split to be arranged, just more heavily on the actual campsites provided?
Yeah, I personally, I think it should be probably 60% on the campsites, and then maybe a 30 on or actually less than that, probably a 60, 20, 10, 10, sort of thing. 20% on the registration, and then then 10 on the population, because our more rural counties don't have that registration and the population. And they're getting like 20 and 30%. That's 50% almost. So that seems to be not allocated correctly.
Right. Melissa?
I just wanted to kind of tag on to what Craig was saying, because I feel like it kind of favors the larger counties when you will have smaller counties, or even say you have like our county, there are some parks where we just don't have a way to add additional campsites. So we don't have a way to necessarily grow. So then we're always going to be restricted with that. And then it doesn't give us an additional opportunity for things like that. So I just kind of want to add on to that.
Yeah. Stacy?
When I look at the other opportunities for those larger entities, those larger counties to generate revenue through TLT, for example, or other, opportunities to stay in hotels and things that some of our small counties just don't have a lot of. When people want to come visit us, they come in RVs, they bring their tents, they come to get away from that big city experience. And so you're right. If we are truly intending this to support RV use, I think we do have to weight it differently to these smaller population counties that, so that we can make enough campsites to, meet the need.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Steve?
So this is a tough one. I don't necessarily disagree with the three people who just spoke to this, but while this is funded through RV fees, at least this portion of the use of those RV fees, I'm not so sure historically was intended for funding RV campgrounds or parks. It was a method and mechanism to fund county parks in general in the state of Oregon, is my understanding. Just like OPRD gets half or close to half, actually a little over half of the RV registration fees, and they don't have to use them specifically on campsites and RV sites. They can use them to manage their parks in which way, shape, or form. So while if we went that way, it would probably end up benefiting Jackson County, I do worry about the other counties that do depend on this revenue to fund their county park systems. And I think that they would likely be harmed in that.
Mhm. Craig?
We just completed our annual budget, and a large portion of the RV fees is what makes our budget solvable, because we're not in the general fund at all. We are completely self-sufficient. We don't get funded by taxpayer money at all. So this sort of revenue is very important to us, and it helps us to maintain and to improve our aging and existing parks that we do have. Because not being in the general fund is kind of difficult, but it's something that our commission has decided to do, and so we have to function on what we bring in, and this is a large portion of what we bring in, those RV fees.
Mhm.
That's all.
Thank you. I appreciate all that. If there's no further comments or thoughts about the distribution formula, I'm going to move on through to the campsite survey. If anyone has any thoughts about this, it's another section with no changes proposed. Not seeing any hands. I'm going to move right along through to the distribution of funds. So similar to what we were just talking about with the distribution formula, this is the County Park Assistance Program. One thing before I call out to you, Craig, Cindy, this is kind of addressing some of that like administrative clarity or flexibility. These are some of the proposed changes where it previously had dictated like a specific date that things would happen by, like January 1st, or for the actual grant program, like October 1st, or like in November, the advisory committee will meet. We just removed some of those specifics to have a little bit more administrative flexibility.
Thanks, Julian. I appreciate you flagging that.
Yeah, for sure. Craig.
Back up to the next year, there was a thing in there with group areas. I'm sorry, I didn't get my hand raised in time. We have the group campsites. Our group campsites are in our campground. but and they do have water and electric, and there's a dump station available. So does that that kind of is confusing to me. It does not meet the definition of a campsite, group campsites.
I think that the idea behind this is that group campsites absolutely can be considered in or counted in the campsite survey as long as it still meets the same definitions that or the same requirements that all of the other campsites require. So as long as it has like I'll jump all the way back up to definitions up here.
Yeah, it has the spur and the water, potable water, sanitary facilities, table. Yeah, all those are included in each individual site in the camp or in the large group area. We call them large group areas, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
then I would,
yeah,
as long as it can meet all of those requirements, it would still be able to count. I think that the intention behind the group campsite section or line here is just that to avoid having like, oh, this is just like one gigantic open area where people can put like 4 RVs and 2 tents and then consider it a campsite when it still doesn't like provide drinking water or a fire pit or something like that.
Okay.
Tyler?
Yeah, thanks, Julian. So my question, and it may be covered here, it may not be covered, but as you're providing that administrative flexibility, down under 5, I think it says that distributions to counties will be made within 45 days after the end of each month. And I just wanted to make sure that, I want to make sure that because of administrative flexibility, those distributions are not going to slip one way or the other, because we budget and count on this revenue to be regular and predictable. And so I don't want to see something by the, some process by the department, pushing something 6 months out.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not not in the intention or planned at all. I think that the administrative flexibility is much more about the grants program rather than the automatic revenue distribution process. And we haven't made any changes to this part that would allow us to not regularly disperse those funds.
No, I saw that, but where the concern was, okay, so look, if you look at number 1, on or about January 1 has been deleted. And so what if it's February, March, April, or May when you get around to determining how much money is available, and then that pushes everything? I just want to make sure that you were thinking about that and I don't think that's the intention, but I want to make sure that it doesn't provide that opportunity.
Yeah. And I think that this is also kind of, I mentioned one of the main like purposes for the rule revisions here was to kind of bring the rules also into how the program kind of generally operates in current day. And for, again, I've only been here 2 years, but I also believe that in the recent years prior to me starting here, I don't think that this was necessarily being sent out on or about January 1st. These estimates usually aren't sent out until part of the RV fee certification process, which I think is a little bit further down. And that's something that, to my understanding, usually in March or April, I'm hoping to do that soon, is when we send out those estimates of the funding availability for the next fiscal year. So we're not anticipating any direct changes to that process. Mark?
Yeah, Julian, just to go back to campsite survey, I was
Sure.
thinking about this, but I think you need to insert a date certain as of July 1 that an inventory is taken. That's typically when it is done.
Mm.
But it doesn't call it out.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
I think your intent is to get those numbers to line up with the biennium.
Mm.
But I think I would just simply in section 1 and submit an inventory as of July 1. Then everyone's reporting the same number, same date.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, page 8, under matching requirements, D. I'm just curious what the logic, talking about flexibility a lot today. So flexibility for the counties. At the bottom of that D, it says engineering and administrative costs and costs incurred prior to state and local agreement cannot exceed 15% of the total project cost. I'm just wondering where the logic came for that 15%. And nobody wants to ever fund engineering. You know, engineering and that kind of stuff's boring. You never can get money for it, but you got to get it done before you do, you know, the project most of the time. And it sure would be nice if we could, you know, do a $200,000 engineering project with county funds that, frankly, as others have said, you know, we're all getting pulled from the general fund, including Jackson County, and $200,000 is hard to come by, you know, in our small little budgets when we're scraping bottom. It would be nice to be able to use that as match for more than 15%, if possible. So I would like to throw that out there as a possibility and hear where the 15% came from.
Yeah. All right, 1 sec. I believe that the 15% limit has been relatively standard practice, at least in the County Opportunity Grant Program Manual, as well as our other grant programs, as well as in the grant agreements, I believe. Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think it's been department standard practice for a little while. I don't know exactly where the 15% specifically came from, but I don't think that it was like out of nowhere a new thing.
Yeah, I can just add a little bit of information on that. So in our grant programs, these grant programs are intended to be for shovel-ready, ready to proceed projects to do on the ground work, not to do a lot of engineering and design work, because as you know, that could take up a lot of the funds and time. So if you are at a point where you're just finishing up your engineering designs, where you're like at 90% complete, then that's a pretty good indication that you're ready to go. And so that's where the 15% cap is for our programs, because we do have a responsibility to get the funds out in a grant agreement and then wrap up the project in about 2 years' time. And so that's why that's capped at that small amount.
Michelle, I guess tapping onto your comments, if we're encouraging people to have shovel-ready projects, which I agree with, so we can get the work done in a short amount of time, it seems like we should be incentivizing people to bring, you know, 98% engineered projects to the table. And a huge incentivizer, if you will, pronounce that wrong, but if you will, is having, you know, that money that we've invested as a local government into the engineering be worth more than 15% of match. So I get that this is historically how we've done it, but it seems like this is the time to have those conversations of how we want to do it moving forward. So if that's a possibility of, you know, even getting that up to 50%, I'm not saying 100%, it would be very, very helpful for small counties.
Yeah.
I believe we've noted that. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. Tyler?
Yeah, so I would kind of follow all of those comments, but the other thing that I think you should maybe consider is maybe there's a small grant pool to be able to do some of this engineering work. And a couple of you on the call know this, but just to get a normal scenic area application, it's 18 months. And me as a government agency, then I get overlaid requirements from SHPO, overlaid requirements from the tribes, et cetera, that, it's 2 years is a tough window to hit, even as, if I was doing this private development on my own home, to get all this stuff together. So I would encourage you to maybe look at, is there a pre-development grant stream where we could apply for and get these things, and then follow that up in a subsequent year with, the project cost grant process. So, those are my comments. I'm probably going to lose $1 million grant award because of these timelines, which is unfortunate, right? Because we're trying to build out recreation. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, just on this topic, I definitely, think it could maybe just be unpacked and looked into a little bit, whether or not it's the definition of match or the actual percentage. It's in the and all the attempts to get these things shovel ready, there's a lot of unforeseen costs that come up. Recently with an RTP award, we had, just for example, we had a cultural resource survey that we thought was going to be a bit of a layup, and we budgeted just under $10,000 to do it, and we're over $37,000 in contractors alone, not including staff time, and so there's just a lot of legwork to get these things going into shovel ready. I understand the goal of getting the money into the project, but yeah, just something worth considering. What Steve's been saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy?
Oh, I was just going to say I was confused because it seems to me that there is a portion in here that's for planning, and that would answer the question as to whether you're losing out and you could use that for engineering planning, because some of the money can be used for planning assistance. It says that.
Yeah, and Cindy, my comments were the amount of money is not even coming close to make these projects feasible. As my counterpart from Hood River was just saying, the dollars are huge when you have to go through those scenarios. And then Julian, I've got another comment on 2A and B, when I don't want to pass that, but while we're talking about this one, but I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Steve?
Just to clarify Cindy's point, but if OPRD can clarify it, my understanding through the years of being active with this group and this committee is the planning grants will not fund engineering for projects. They'll fund like park master planning and like community planning. That is correct, right?
That's correct.
Thanks, Steve. That's what I was trying to figure out. Thanks for answering that question.
All right, well, I don't want to move on because we had another comment about 2AB here.
Yeah, so Julian, my comment there was similar to the population comments up above. And with our growing populations, I think this number should potentially keep track. And I don't know, depending on, I just pulled it up on my phone. You know, if you were to go from 30,000 to 40,000, that would add one county, depending on which population estimates you're looking at. So I think you should consider at least trending those numbers with over time.
Mhm. Michelle? You're muted.
Thanks. Since it was just brought up again, I think, it sounds like, so we're putting forward the things that we wanted to change. And this is good that we're getting this feedback. I think on that formula, going back to the formula question, it might be a good idea for maybe Association of Oregon Counties and or ORPA in combination, maybe to get together and work on a suggestion on a formula that they would support and provide that to us.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough lift. I'll just be honest with you. If you want to include that in these rules, then I think Cindy and I'd be happy to work on that. Not so sure you're going to get consensus in the timeline that you're trying to achieve these rules by, though. If you're talking about, are you talking about the formula for the match, or are you talking about the formula and the distribution of the RV registration fees?
Originally, the formula of the distribution of the RV fee, since that came up first about the smaller communities, et cetera. Anyway, we can revisit that before we adjourn today. So I just want to make sure that Julian can get through these rules, but let's circle back to that before we end.
So quick question, Julian, at the onset of this, I think it was Julian or might have been somebody else, had mentioned that the goal was to not have a second meeting. There's a lot of stuff that we're discussing today that it would be nice to see how you guys take that suggestion and put it into writing and bring it back so we can all look at it again prior to this being done. So I'm just curious if that, and you're highlighting one section of it, Michelle. Is that going to happen? Can that happen? Or are you stuck to that very strict timeline?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. And the goal was to shoot for one, just to be mindful of your guys' time as well as the timeline that we had to be able to implement any of these changes prior to the grant program kicking off, or the grant timeline kicking off. We always could have a second meeting. There's also the ability to, if we implemented draft rules, to leave public comments from you or your organization or whatnot, because we do look at all of the comments that come in our public comment period and take those into consideration as well. So if we come up with another set of draft rules based off of this meeting here today, a great opportunity to provide additional feedback would be during that public comment period if there's not a need for another extensive review from the Rule Advisory Committee.
That sounds good. I appreciate that. I'll just say that I'm always in favor of maybe a second meeting just to be able to, provide further comment on rules that will affect us all, because rules are rules, and once they're in rule, then you're stuck with them. So rather than rushing the process, it'd be nice to be able to see what you guys do with the comments and suggestions you've been given today.
For sure. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Mark?
Just to follow up on that threshold of 30,000, since the 94 revision, there's actually been 3 counties that drop population. And so I personally don't think there's an issue there. If you've got 3 new counties that were formerly not eligible because they exceeded 30 and now they are eligible, I'm not sure what problem we're trying to solve by revisiting that 30,000 threshold. So let's just throw that out there. And personally, I don't have an issue with the 15% limit on engineering fees. I think, the objective of this program is to produce tangible results in the ground that the recreating public can benefit from. And we don't need to see a lot of costs going to plans and engineering stuff that may still sit on the shelf for lack of funding to actually build them. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you. Tyler.
Yeah, and I would just add, Mark, from us, we are growing in population. We're bouncing up against those levels. And so, to your point, keeping development going, if our grant match goes from 25% to 50%, you won't see any more projects in our county. So that's why I was looking at that.
Okay. Just recognize if you bump it up, there'll be some counties that just became eligible for it that now get dropped off.
I would just add that I do agree with Mark. Nobody likes funding projects that sit on a shelf, but using engineered pre-agreement expenses for engineering as match to a project that you're applying for construction to actually build and implement those engineered plans is, to me, a little bit different than funding an engineering plan specifically that is going to sit on a shelf and never be built. I agree on that front.
Thank you. Moving on, just want to double check that there's no other questions or comments about the distribution or the County Park Assistance Program that we were just on earlier. And then moving on to the County Opportunity Grant Program itself, which we've been chatting about the matching requirements here. But then below that, any comments about the planning requirements that have been added or into the application procedure itself? Yeah, and this is another one where by October 1st of the first year of each biennium, the rules previously kind of prescribed this as being a biennium cycle rather than an annual cycle. So that's another place where we were just increasing some of our flexibility for dates to run the program there. Tyler.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm just going to kind of bounce through. I had a couple of things here with all the additions. Under Section B, maps. So things like site plans versus park boundary maps. This is where I really wanted to see that definition to help the people that are writing these things understand that what they put in these areas are, have sweeping impacts in later life. So again, I would try to get some clarity around this. I am not sure. I just had a question under E, under the Lux statement. And I got a question into our planning department about this because I'm not sure that they're going to enter a Lux or give a Lux compatibility statement until we've gone through the full planning process, which again gets into stacking up all of those other requirements. And so is it a full Lux statement, or are you just, looking for, yes, the zoning is correct, et cetera, et cetera? And again, I apologize, I haven't gotten information back on this yet.
I believe that one of the option, it's been a minute since I looked at it, but I believe that one of the options on the Lux is that like it's, not like land use review has been submitted but not fully approved yet. I believe so. It's not inherently absolutely necessary that like everything is fully completed at the time of submission, I believe. But I think this is more just wanting to make sure that the land use compatibility statement is specifically mentioned as a requirement for applications. Tyler?
Oh, sorry, I didn't take my hand down, but same thing with the site plan, right? You get a site plan once you've gone through a complete engineering process. So again, if you're looking for kind of a back of the napkin of, we're going to put a bathroom here, and that's the site plan, that's one thing. If it's a full, site plan from an engineer, that's another thing.
Yeah, heard. Steve?
On the below program narrative, page 9, the requirements of the application. This has come up from time to time, and I guess just I'll take the opportunity to remind OPRD staff the copy of property deed release or formal binding agreement from a landowner. So many of us have recreation sites that we manage under contract with the Corps of Engineers, Bureau of Reclamation, or other entities. They could be 20, 25-year agreements, but the feds just will not renew those agreements whenever. They're getting worse and worse at this. As a matter of fact, Corps of Engineers is currently renewing an agreement with us that expired last December. They're just postponing it because, they're short-staffed or whatever else. So I would like to have in there like something or a letter of intent to renew the agreement or some sort of language in there from the landowner to give us a little bit of flexibility, because I have gone through application processes before where staff has directed us, hey, you need to go, this agreement's going to expire in 5 years. You need to get it renewed and then come back or whatnot. And that's just not doable with the feds agency. So some flexibility in there would be awesome. And then the last one right below that, Jay, how do you define a documented Americans with Disability Act compliance plan specific to projects? What is that?
Michelle, would you be able to jump in on that one?
I mean, which number? Sorry, I'm not, I guess I don't understand the.
Number J, we all fully embrace and agree with the fact that, our facilities have to be ADA compliant, but at the minimum. But when I'm looking at things that I have to submit with an application, I'm just wondering what J is.
I believe that it's what was it previously?
I just don't remember that in current application packets.
I think that's a changing of wording of just your ADA. Like we want to see that you've checked it for ADA compliance and that you have some kind of plan, whether it's a specific site plan or if your agency has an accessibility plan.
Yeah, there's a question in the. Oh,
an
go ahead.
ADA transition plan
Yes.
in one of the other grant programs.
Yes.
And that's a system-wide thing, but then there was also the narrower focus that could happen, which is you've evaluated this particular site
Exactly.
and this accessibility
Like a site
of this
assessment.
particular project, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's what we do in all of our programs and what the expectation would be here. So it just could be, we should note the
Yeah,
wording on that.
Yeah, I'd be really
current-
careful because the phrase an ADA compliance plan is a formal written strategy. I mean, it's formal. So maybe change that word. There's key components of an ADA compliance plan that are like laid out. So maybe change that language.
Yeah, and these are attachments because in all your in your applications right now, there's questions that we answer saying how we're going to address, compliance with accessibility rules, and we do, have a compliance plan. This is just a new attachment that could be very, burdensome for some of the smaller counties.
It makes sense to me after serving on another committee and then coming and talking about this, that if there is some consistent language across all of these different programs, it would be to everyone's advantage to utilize that consistent terminology. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Stacy, did you have another comment or?
Actually, I just wanted to second Steve's point about the one before Jay. What was it? The 25-year thing, because we also do have a lot of those long-term leases, and in many cases it would only behoove us to apply for something like this in the first couple years before we, start running out of time on that 25-year lease. So I know our Army Corps leases are 25 years. I believe our Forest Service lease is 30. We have others that are various lengths as well.
Thanks. Any other, Tyler?
Yeah, so just on the appraisals when you're trying to acquire ground, I think it's fine to get the appraisals. Like for us, a lot of these are in more rural areas, might be farm ground. But if that land is adjacent to existing municipally owned park ground, for example, the landowners are, they're asking for a premium. And if we're ever going to add that ground, we're going to have to pay a premium. And so I think, and I don't know what the right answer here is, but there needs to be some consideration for if you're expanding park ground, just by the nature of a ground being adjacent, you're going to pay more money for it, even though your appraisal's going to appraise it as, pasture. We're gonna be paying a premium to get it. So I don't know how you want to address that, but that's just a comment.
And I'm sorry, I'm going back on another subject. Is there not a chat feature in this program? Because I just found this or a statute on recreation grantees having to just meet statewide accessibility design standards. That's all it says. So it's not as formal. So somebody mentioned using the same language throughout. So I was just going to paste that in there. But for Julian, it's ORS 390.182.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Yeah, and
182.
this,
Yeah, it just says state agencies giving grants for trails or docks must ensure the projects meet statewide accessibility design standards. So just saying it that way would be better.
perfect. Yeah, Cindy, there's no chat feature. Just with this being a public meeting, the public wouldn't be able to
Oh, I see.
view the chat as we're doing it. So
Yeah, I appreciate that.
yep.
All right, well, now moving on to the application process itself. If there are any questions or comments here. Mark?
Sorry, Julian, I was waiting to chime in on that section J.
Oh, no worries.
And I'm struggling with that's a new document that you're looking to ask for on these grant applications. And I'm struggling for what you're asking for there. When I do these grants, the engineering design, it's always stated in the narrative that the project will be designed to current ADA, ABA standards by a licensed civil engineer, and that's usually what happens. So I'm not sure why you're asking for this up front, and it says specific to projects. So I personally want some clarity on exactly what you're looking for there, because right now we just state that the project will be designed to those standards, and that's the output I get from my engineer of record. So I'm not sure where you guys are going with that. That's all I gotta say.
Right. Thank you. Melissa?
Yeah, I just was on that point with the ADA because on the grant application asks if we have an ADA transition plan, and then it asks how will your proposed project meet current ADA accessibility standards. And so if we just had something uniform that we could just like go off of to refer back to that, because you like already, like when I do like playground grants, you know, I have to be very particular about making sure that like every aspect of the playground is ADA compliant, and that like there's parking area that's ADA compliant, and the curb and the ramp and all that thing. So like if we just had something simple like that that we could refer to, because it is kind of vague, so that would really help on things like this.
Mhm.
I would, you know, I'm always trying to advocate for the smaller counties, especially Eastern Oregon counties, and these types of advisory committees as well. And those folks, just as you know, in Jackson County, not all the time, we're not always doing a civil engineer drawing and spending $200,000 on a engineered plan for a small project where you're just putting in an ADA accessible restroom and parking spot and maybe a path to a playground or something like that. So I just ask, keep it simple, please. That the intent is to get money into our parks, for parks and recreation. And if you have confidence via the comment that was just made that people are addressing that topic in their applications, then I think that is enough from my perspective. And at the end of the day, if they build a facility that's not ADA compliant, then you guys have teeth to go back and claw that money back if need be.
Yeah, thanks. With no further comments, scrolling down, we're now entering page 9, I believe, with the application process. And various project scoring criteria. Tyler?
I had a couple of comments on this section. So it looks like I think the numbering might be off. C on this one, it ends with the committee shall review all applications using project selection criteria, including but not limited to the following. So I think it's good. It ties to the SCORP banner, any master plans and those kinds of things. But it seems to me like B, C, D, and E have all been covered under things like the SCORP. And in particular, the one that I highlighted was D, and that's financial considerations, including a cost benefit ratio. And my comment was that seems pretty subjective. I mean, whose cost benefit ratio is it? Is it ours? Is it the advisory committee? Is it a set number somewhere? And so I think you've kind of got it all, especially in the SCORP and then the local plans. I don't know why we're calling out all of these other things when the advisory committee is scoring these based on the SCORP. So just my comment on that.
Thanks. Mark?
Yeah, I'll second what the previous speaker just said. In the grant application, there's no data requested that an informed committee member could look at a benefit cost ratio of a project. And some of them are purely non-financial. If you're just putting in a day use amenity that doesn't have any revenue associated with it, it seems like there's a criteria there that doesn't have any data or substance behind it. I'd question why it's even in there to begin with.
I think that the benefit here isn't strictly speaking about a financial benefit or like an increased revenue draw or source necessarily. Rather the recreational benefit that the project might provide.
But you're not, on the application, we're not being asked for, how many people are gonna benefit from this playground or campground. You're not asking for any of that information that a committee member could use to make an informed decision whether or not this cost benefit ratio supports the project or not. So I think you just need to look at that, because you're not getting the information I believe you need to make a informed cost benefit ratio decision.
And I just want to note, I think, Julian, that particular, this section, some of that stuff was already in the rule. I think it looks like it was just kind of moved around. So I don't think we were actually suggesting any changes there. We were just kind of leaving it alone, but it was reorganized.
Yeah, this was previously kind of nested under a different paragraph, but it's broadly still the same language that it previously was.
Yeah, I think the comments are still applicable there, right? If we're going to be held to a standard, I mean,
Yeah, to your comment about what, I'm not sure where we're going with it. It's just, that was in there. So this is where, yeah, we want to hear from you on this. So yeah, I think that's a good point and we've noted it.
And scrolling further down, we're now entering project administration section. And this is what, page 11 here.
I see that you guys took out the shall be executed by January 31 of each year, by the first year of each biennium. Is there any date that seems, because the committee meets, I believe, in October, November timeframe, and I get that it has to get commission approval and go through the process, but for those of us that are actually delivering the projects, that are budgeting and planning, it would be nice to know that there's some date that we can expect a agreement to come through. So I don't know if that's possible. I get that there's one-offs, each different agreement, but if you could even say by June 30th of the following year or something along those lines, I think it may be helpful.
Melissa?
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to that. I agree if we could have something like that, just so that then just was like an example, because I had submitted for the Big Eddy Campground Playground, and we were expecting it, like we would have the grant, I think, agreement in February or March or whatever. Anyways, just if we had a better timeline or understanding of like when these things would go through, and obviously I know it's government, so it does take a little bit longer, but like if there was some kind of timeline on that, it would help us so that we can plan, work with our contractors, and also, I mean, with the way things go, things constantly are changing budget wise and whatnot. So just a thought on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Stacy?
Was there a rationale for taking out that date there?
Partly because this was still when the program was run on a biennium cycle. And right now with our usually the application cycle opens in August and closes 2 months later. And then in around November, December is when the advisory committee meets. And then the next commission meeting that is available for us to propose the slate of awards is not until February. So having the agreement executed by the end of January prior to commission approval, tough. But I think the main reason was just to remove the mention of the biennium cycle. But but yeah, we can definitely note adding a specific date.
So I suggest, yeah, go ahead and take the biennium stuff out, but leave the date, but put it, end of February, 1st of March, whatever it is. But recognizing that all of us are completing our budget documents by early April and being able to plan in a relatively short amount of time when you only have a 2-year runway. And the thing that we have run into in our past awards has been that inflationary costs, that if you push it off to that second year of the award to get your work done, now you're talking about all those costs that you had estimated to put in your application are now completely irrelevant because, a year or a year and a half has gone by and you're trying to, meet those contractor requirements.
Steve?
Just picking up a little bit on what Stacy just brought up. You guys have a year. You give us a year to get 25% of the work done, substantial completion. If we don't get this grant and that project approved in our budget that we're submitting in February, March, April timeframe, then we get to July, the beginning of our next fiscal year. We then have to go back to our Board of Commissioners and we have to, submit for a supplemental budget to get that authority increase for these funds, which then pushes us, 4, 5, 6 months back into the process. So if we don't get these agreements in a timely manner to be able to put them into our budget, meeting that that first year target that you guys are holding us to accountable can be challenging in some situations. So just pointing that out, as you might not realize how counties budget.
Thank you. Yeah. Thomas.
Just building off that, and I see substantial justifications to warrant an extension listed, but some of these projects are pretty big, and to get a contractor, it might take a year to get on their calendar. And then you take things into consideration, the elevation of the project. You might get shut out by snow a significant portion of the year, and then fire season is becoming more and more prevalent throughout the state. And so it's just some factors to consider in that 25% completion rate. There's just extenuating factors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other comments on project administration here? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the County Parks Assistance Advisory Committee. Thomas, I just want to make sure that your hand is okay.
I guess if we're going to the advisory committee, under 2A, middle of page 13, says county representation candidate list shall be supplied by the Association of Oregon Counties. Not all counties, all but one, being Jackson County, are members of the Association of Oregon Counties. So it would be nice if there was some other way, to put in there that list shall be supplied by the Association of Oregon Counties, or individual counties, or something along those lines. If all you're looking is for a list of candidates, it shouldn't solely come from the Association of Oregon Counties, in my opinion.
Yeah, certainly. We also, I think the intention with the last one here is to give us the flexibility to just direct outreach to our county mailing list to also solicit applications or interested folks. Um, and my intention is certainly to always do that, not exclusively rely on other organizations' outreach list. But yeah, thank you. Thomas?
Just an idea, maybe having someone on the advisory panel with camp host experience or a background, could add some value and their experience and what they're seeing in these applications.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Any other comments or questions about the committee? Not seeing any.
But
Assessment.
one last comment. I didn't have this comment until you just brought that to my attention. So does it not seem that 2A and 2D are repetitive?
This is, I believe, specific to the county representatives and then the citizen representatives who serve in different capacities or separate capacities on the committee.
Yeah, so I think it would be great if B was just struck and D said county and citizen representation candidate list shall be supplied by those three. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Stacy?
It doesn't really outline what the minimum number of representative folks on this committee should be. It does give you plenty of opportunity in, what is it, number 4 now, to add as many people as you want, essentially, or not 4. I'm thinking E. It gives you a huge discretion, right? It could be 5 people, it could be 25 people, it could be 105 people. Like, is there some ballpark amount
Of the like 7, I think are you just talking about the like who we're reaching out to or how many members on the committee itself? Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, at the top there, it lists how, of the different things, but then when you go down to, I think, E, you could add as many other people as you want, essentially.
I think one's talking about who the department can consult with, and one is talking about who's on the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, so all of
But you're right, it's
through E here are who we're soliciting recommendations for committee membership from, and then up here is who specifically will be on the committee, if I'm understanding your thought correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Moving further down then to assessment for services, if there's any comments there.
Julian, I had a question on that.
Sure.
So is this in any way also tied to some type of, either the funding formula, and I don't know what the right look of it is, but this always makes the department whole. But if the money's not coming in, I mean, everybody should kind of be on the same playing field, is my sense. And so I'm not sure. I was back looking at the funding formula and I was trying to add up the different percentages, but it doesn't all come out. So just a comment. I mean, when things are good, things should be good, but when things are tough, then everybody should share in that.
Tyler, just to clarify, do you mean everybody, like all the counties should share, or OPRD and the counties should share? What do you mean by that?
Well, so these assessment for services, this is specific to the department. And the department's going to claim whatever costs they can justify under this statement, regardless of what the revenue stream is. I think that's why I was asking the question.
So Tyler, I think you bring up a good good issue, because in most statute, when it comes to a department taking fees, it usually caps it. And I think, Steve, maybe you would remember this from the work we've done together. I think it's usually like 2%. I'm just curious, or maybe this is something Katie would know, but it might just be worth looking into, just for transparency and showing that you're doing the same as other agencies when it comes to taking a fee off the top of a grant program.
Yeah, it's a trickle down effect for sure. I mean, the Oregon Department of Transportation, before this money even makes it into the state parks pot to be distributed, partially to state parks, partially to the counties, the ODOT is taking off a portion to administer the collection of those fees and dispersal to the state, and then the state is taking off a portion of the county's share of the fees to administer these programs. So I'm sure OPRD has the same concern with ODOT and making sure that they're only taking the part that's applicable and making sure that there may or may not be a cap. And they probably, OPRD as such, could probably realize how the county might have those same concerns, and some sort of a cap may be applicable as well.
Yeah, and we can do further review of that and look at what other agencies do as well to make sure we're consistent there.
Mhm. Hearing no further comments, moving on to the conversion requirements. So this was a inclusion of a new rule, not previously in the county opportunity rules, largely copied over from the local government grant program rules.
And my understanding is the local government grant program rules were largely copied over from the land and water conservation program rules years ago. They seem to be pretty identical.
Yeah, largely pretty similar.
They're not
but
identical to the land and water rules, though.
yeah,
Close as far as the conversions go.
roughly. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go for it. I was just going to say, so I have heartburn with, we all want these funds to be invested in parks that will stay parks for years. But the Land and Water Conservation Program, it is a beast in and of itself that we all struggle with, including state parks. I mean, many of us have open conversions. I'll fully admit Jackson County has an open conversion through Land and Water Conservation Fund. I wish I could have a conversation with my predecessor who years ago used Land and Water Conservation Program funds to purchase tax lot after tax lot for the Bear Creek Greenway. And it creates these issues. And I just, for the state to hold us accountable for that program, which is really, really hard to address open conversions, because NPS has these really ungodly rules on how you can actually solve a conversion. And the state is then transferring that to these grant programs, which they've done with the local government grant program, and now they're doing with the county opportunity grant program. It seems a very heavy-handed approach that hurts counties in this situation and is going to hurt our parks and is going to hurt our customers. And if it's just bad practice, in my opinion. I get that the state is expected to address these conversions through NPS, but I don't think the immediacy of addressing these issues warrants the very, well, draconian approach of saying, if you have a conversion, then we're not going to give you these funds. I think that's way too heavy-handed.
Tyler?
Yeah, I fully and wholeheartedly support Steve's comments on this. And anywhere the word perpetuity enters into these regulations, things change. And we need to be able to react to those changes. And so, if you're talking about conversions here, I would be saying, if you want to protect the public's investment, at least put a buyout provision here where a county or whoever can buy out whatever was put into that project to put it back into the fund, so that we can get out from under some of these rules. And I know it's more complicated than that, but this makes it really tough, especially with these time horizons. Communities are completely different in a 25-year plan process, let alone into perpetuity. So.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, but I do want to just address that the conversion requirements here, only property acquired has the in perpetuity language. Everything else is capped at a 25-year kind of like conversion protection. And again, because this is another place where it differs from LWCF requirements, like land and water or local government grant program, we did include a prorated buyout or like payback section here, which is not allowable under LWCF rules, but I did want to just throw that out that it is included here.
Yeah, my comments still remain the same.
Steve?
Yeah, Tyler just mentioned something that I don't know if he intended it this way. If he did, he's a genius, but I think that the state should consider these land and water conservation fund conversions. They're really, really difficult to resolve in smaller counties. I mean, if you're the state and you have an open conversion, you have a whole state to be able to look at possible replacement properties, et cetera. When you're a county, you have a small county, right? And as I've shared with Julian and I've shared with Michelle and I'll share with others, it can be really hard to find a piece of replacement property within a county that meets the NPS requirements for conversions, which are really hard and really difficult to meet, and that everybody agrees. And you can do that with the money that you have available, and you can provide public benefit, because we can all just go buy a piece of property and say conversion resolved and waste public money. That's not what we should be doing. We should be spending money on things that benefit the public. So with that said, if there I think if the state wants us as counties and cities and parks recreation districts to resolve these LWCF conversions, which the state has themselves, then I think the state should consider, if possible, some sort of a conversion pool, if you will, where local jurisdictions can pay into this pool that the state has. The state manages that fund, and the state then, as they're working with other jurisdictions that might need money to complete a conversion or move something forward, they can use that. But paying into that pool, helps us address those conversions. And I get that, your comment will probably be, well, NPS doesn't allow that. We need to begin having conversations with NPS in these regards, because the NPS program is outdated, it's years old, and perpetuity doesn't work when communities are growing out from their urban growth boundaries and gobbling up, areas that used to be parks for development. So I think it's time to think outside the box on how we can solve these things. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, just that approach to say, nope, you can't have any more grant funds until you solve this, because that's just not in the public's interest.
Yeah, heard. Thank you.
I don't know how much additional changes we have going forward on the next 2 pages there, Julian, but I know we're getting close to time, so I just wanted to see if we wanted to just open it up to anyone if there's any additional comments that anyone saw in the last 2 pages there that they wanted to jump in real quick, just a couple second, 30-second comment, and then I'm gonna jump back to the slideshow and then see if we can wrap up this meeting just to keep everyone's time in consideration.
Tyler?
Yeah, my only other comment under this emergency procedure, in the sense that the director may propose projects to the commission for funding under this section. That to me is kind of like a open-ended checkbook for whatever the state wants to do. And if the state wants to pay for it out of their general fund, then that's fine. But if it's coming out of these revenues that could reduce the amount for counties, then I would oppose that language being there.
Right, thanks. Thomas?
This comment is submitted more by my budget and finance department, county administrator, and board of commissioners. And basically, they're hoping to see the consideration of kind of like a grant mobilization cost kind of be considered. I understand that, they're asking for overhead costs, inadvertent time costs, things of that nature. But with county budgets being what they are these days, there's kind of a lot of discussion about all of the money that's being front loaded to accomplish these projects, and we're very grateful for it. I just wanted to share what that side of the conversation is saying, and I promised I would say something. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Jillian, if you want to end your share, I will jump back in and share just the PowerPoint I have here. So I know we're getting really low on time, and we have some things that are still outstanding. So I did want to mention that as we were talking about earlier, I think it was you, Steve, that had mentioned looking at the 15% and maybe pulling together with the ORPA and seeing what recommendations we might be able to come up with, and that might take some time. So I just wanted to say that though this rulemaking is happening now, it doesn't mean that we're going to take another 30 years before we look at this rule. If adjustments need to be made, we do have the ability to make those adjustments on a more frequent basis. It's not a program that has to be stagnant for 30 years. And so if we implement these draft rules now, it doesn't mean that we can't go back in the next 6 months whenever there is time to get those groups together and make a recommendation to OPRD to then implement those rules also going forward. So just throwing that out there as an option. And then I did want to talk about the potential of a second RAC meeting. I know we did get through the draft rules, but there's still some considerations and comments that you guys might have as we go in and look at some of the comments that you guys have made and adjust some of the language that we have. So that is something we'll look at going forward as we get back together and review all the comments from you guys to determine whether we want to have, or if we need to have a second RAC meeting and maybe schedule it for a shorter period of time so more people, so the availability of everyone might be easier, and go over any adjustments that we made. And so, Cindy, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to be really clear that we'll probably have to revisit this after our next session. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Steve and I are make a run again at increasing the RV fee, which has not been increased for 24 years, which is almost as long as the rules have been standing. So we're going to make a run at that again.
Perfect. Yeah. And so, all that to say, we do want to have a conceded effort to make sure that these rules are not just not touched for extended periods of time whenever we recognize that we want to make sure the program runs as efficiently as possible. We only have a minute left, so I'm not going to get into this economic and fiscal impact. This is questions that we ask of all of our RACs and any rules that we're doing on the economic and fiscal impact of any of the rules that we're looking at implementing. So I want to go ahead and pass this right now, anticipating that we will likely need to have another, at least half hour to an hour long rule advisory committee just to wrap up some of the final stuff and maybe go over some of the language that we look at adjusting. So at this point, are there any additional questions, considerations, comments from the RAC participants here today on where we're at in the process, what it looks like going forward, or any additional information you guys might like to have?
No, just to say thanks for asking the questions and allow us the opportunity to give input.
Of course. Thomas?
Nope, sorry. Just yeah,
No worries.
scrambling to turn my phone off.
No worries, I get it. Perfect. All right, well, at this point, we're going to go ahead and get ready to conclude this first RAC meeting. Look for additional communication from me. You'll probably see a second doodle poll come out to try to grab just another 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes to review the last couple things and go over that fiscal economic impact statement. It's probably going to be a pretty quick turnaround as we recognize that the implementation of these rules, as well as trying to make sure we get good, clear, consistent information out for the next grant cycle. We're hoping to, again, be able to present these rules to the commission by June of this year. So look for that from me. And other than that, if you have additional questions, concerns, considerations, you have my email. So please shoot those over. If any of you have comments that you have written down prior to this meeting, also feel free to send those to me and I will include those as part of our agency review whenever we look at the whole picture after the public comment period. So thank you all again for attending today, and we will catch up with you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.